Hey Art Nerds, we are going to be talking about using the grid method, okay? So we have a couple grid method exercises that we're going to kind of walk through. I'm going to show you some tips on how to be successful with your grid method. And a couple of them I have noted already in our instructions about double checking your measurements and stuff like that. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But as soon as you have your reference image and your final image, be it on a pre-made grid like this or a grid that you drew yourself on a canvas or a piece of paper, regardless, you want to be doing this, which is labeling both of your grids. Now, if you are familiar with the game Battleship, you know that that's a game where it's lined up that each square has a name, and that name is a combination of a letter and a number. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to be labeling our grid so then the small one and the big one match. So if I'm having letters across the top on my reference image, I want to make sure that I have referenced the same letters across the top on my final image. And then I'm going to do numbers across the side. And labeling your grids does a couple things. The first, and I believe the most important, is helping you identify where you are very quickly. Especially if you end up having a much larger image with more letters and more numbers on it, okay? Being able to find that 4E square really quick, so 4, boom, E, okay? It helps you figure out where you are on the grid really quickly. And then I also know that since I'm using the grid method, whatever is in the 4E square, I need to make sure that that is all that I include in my 4E square here, okay? So the labeling helps you identify where you are very quickly, and it makes it really quick and double checking that you are in the right spot, okay, versus having to count squares all the time. All right, when you are doing the grid method, after labeling, you can start wherever you want. Some people like to follow the outer contours of their subject around the outside edge and then fill everything in the inside. Some people like to go row by row or column by column. Both work out just fine. I often like to go from the top left-hand corner, sort of kind of work diagonally across, but that's because I'm right-handed and then I don't drag my hand across my paper. If you are left-handed, you might want to start in the upper right and then make your way diagonally, whether that means you're doing this side first or the top first and working your way down. You just don't want to end up dragging your hand across your paper while you are working. All right, so to get started, a couple things. I'm just going to start right here in B1, because if you take a look, there's nothing in A1, so I don't have to draw anything there. And I'm actually going to very, very lightly mark those boxes where I actually have nothing to draw. That helps me make sure that I don't accidentally put something in there, which would be totally awkward. So I'm going to be starting in B1. And I'm going to show you a trick that I often use in some of the more complicated sections, but it's a little bit easier to see when it's a little bit, it's a little less crowded when it comes to how many lines are in there. And that is breaking up your square. Whenever things get kind of complicated, I like to break them up into small pieces just so I can manage it better and I don't get too overwhelmed. Okay. Notice how I made a little plus sign. So I broke up my square into 4 smaller squares. I'm going to do the same thing, but lightly, since I'm going to erase it eventually down here. Break mine up into 4 squares. And now I can see that this line, this curved line, because it's not hair, we're not thinking about object like this is an eye, this is a hand, this is an ear. No. I have a curved line. That's what I'm focusing on, one thing at a time, because I'm not looking at any other boxes, I'm just looking in B1. And I notice my curved line starts below this halfway line, and it goes past it on this side. So it gives me a good idea about where I want to have my line placed. And then you just have to sort of mark where your start is, where your finish is, and then match the same curve that is in your original image. Now, once you finish one box, you just move on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And if it is necessary that you break it up to help you know where things are at, go for it. If you are more comfortable measuring with a ruler, keep in mind that sometimes your original boxes, so like mine here, are smaller than my final one. So know the ratio between the two, whether it's twice as big, 3 times as big, all that kind of stuff. So if you need to know that answer, just ask and I can help you out. But what I found the easiest is thinking about fractions, okay? Drawing has a lot to do with math. So like right here, I broke it up in half. Now, if I wanted to break it up into fourths, I could break this up one more time in my square and then know a better idea of where in between these two lines this line in my B1 square is supposed to go. Okay, so breaking it up into smaller bite-sized pieces makes things so much more manageable and less overwhelming, because you're not thinking of it as I'm drawing a person. You're thinking of it as I'm drawing this curved line, and that's really what you are, okay? What you are doing is you're just using a whole bunch of lines in a certain location with a certain length and a certain direction to create an image. So you'll go one block at a time. It'll end up looking something like this, okay? Notice how I have them labeled on here as well. And, you know, if you want to, you can fill in some of those fill-in spaces. Definitely take advantage of breaking up your squares in some of these more complicated ones, okay? And this grid method exercise just focuses mainly on the contours. We will be adding one in which we will be including values as well, so trying to match the values that you see in the printed image. And we'll also be talking about value as well before we get to this point. So yeah, that is the basics of using the grid method. Any other questions you have, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to help. But these are some of the basics that can kind of get you started if you missed out on anything or forgot some things. So I will see you next time.